Hey there, Joe here. I want to talk about the return of the Fat Mic. Now, am I calling it a Fat Mic because this is called the Cascade Fathead? No, but maybe I am subconsciously. So, I was talking about in last week's video about my ugly back room that I've started using as a tracking room. And I alluded to the fact that I've done tracked drums back there recently. So it's a bit of a tight fit, but the drummer can play comfortably. Has to be a smaller, maybe 4-piece kit. But we were able to get a pretty good drum sound. I've got it here on the screen. I will show that to you, let you hear that in a minute. But what I want to show you specifically, I mean, a drum sound's a drum sound, but specifically this one mic that I've been using in my drum recording that I used back on my album Better This Way. And it was just kind of an extra mic I threw up just to have, and ended up really being an integral part of the tone, even more so with this recent session I'm about to show you. So what is the microphone, and then where did I place it? Who is your father and what does he do? Okay, so this is a ribbon microphone. It's a cheap ribbon mic from Cascade called a Fathead. And ribbon, if you don't know that, means that there's a ribbon in there, but it also means that it's figure 8. So it picks up in this direction and this direction. Doesn't pick up very well in this direction, which is kind of cool. And they tend to be pretty dark sounding mics. They're not very bright. They're kind of the, if you could say this, the opposite of a condenser, because they are much more smooth and rounded and can sound great on harsh things like electric guitar amps and brass, and can be pretty cool on drums. They're a little sensitive, so you don't want to put it right outside of a kick drum because that movement of air might blow things up. But otherwise, it's fair game. So what did I do? Well, let me pull up a video. This is actually the video, a piece of the video that I posted for my VIP members the month we had this tracking session as a part of the behind-the-scenes training that you get as a VIP member. You should be a VIP member, by the way. So let me just see. You can see here, it's not a great shot because I was moving the camera, but you can kind of see this is the setup. So we fit the drums just barely in that room, and that's the miking setup that we use. Now, in a second, I'm going to move the video. It's going to show you, there's the overheads right here. It's going to be hard to see, but just bear with me. Imagine for a moment, would you, that we're looking over here. Okay, can't quite see it, but let me move it a little bit. Might be able to see it in just a second. So there's the kick drum, okay? And I've got a kick drum mic in the hole of the kick drum. But then, if I can work my way around, okay, that's the SM7 that's on the kick, running through a Earthworks kick pad, which is actually kind of cool. You should check that out if you're doing kick drums at home and want a little juice up the sound. It's pretty cool. But, of course, now I'm just talking and yapping and didn't get to, there it is, right there. There she is. Okay, so this is the Fathead I was telling you about. Now, originally, I had it labeled in my track and in the session as a kick out mic, which is pretty typical. One mic in the kick drum, one mic out from it. Typically, the one that's out has a little more low end. The low frequencies have time to develop, so you can blend the woofiness of the out mic with the snappiness of the in mic, and that can work pretty well. There's no reason you can't just use one microphone on kick drum, but it's sometimes nice to have an extra, an alternate, if you will. So that was the original plan for this, but I know that having it that far away from the kick drum, it's going to pick up other stuff, especially the snare. And I kind of wanted that. That was kind of a pleasant side effect of the last time I tried to use this mic in this position. So I moved it back up underneath the piano. Now, there was another reason for that. I thought it might be kind of cool if the piano is resonating. That might create some cool frequencies that'll just make more thickness out of this mic and make it just a very thick sounding mic to blend in. And that's exactly what happened. I don't know how much the piano played into it, but it captured a lot of the kick drum, but also a lot of the snare, but not a lot of the cymbals. Mainly because it's not a very bright mic, but also it's, like I said, it's figure 8. So it's picking up towards the piano and towards the kick drum, but upwards it's not picking up as much up there, which makes it kind of interesting for this use. Now, let's dive in and take a listen. Here is let me just play the drums for you for one of the songs that we recorded. You can take a listen. There's no processing other than, there might be one EQ. No, there's no processing on these drums. So this is just the dry drums with levels and panning. Take a listen. So you can hear it sounds like a drum kit. Kick drum's kind of thumpy. The snare, he tunes his snare pretty high and pretty tight, almost a piccolo sort of sound to it. so it's not going to be a big, thick snare sound. But here is the fat mic. So I've got it still labeled kick out because I thought that's what it's going to be, but it's more just the fatness mic. Let me play first. Before I do that, let's just listen to the drums again, and I will just take out the fat mic. And when I click on this S to bring it back in, listen to what it adds to the overall drum sound. Remember, this is not processed at all. This is just adding in the microphone itself. So obviously it made things louder, and that's not a super fair comparison, but what are you going to do? But it also made things a little thicker, both on the kick, especially on the kick, but also on the snare. So I want you to hear what that track by itself sounds like. Ratian. So pretty cool, right? Let me turn it up a little bit and play it again, just in case that wasn't loud enough for you. So as you listen, you can probably tell, I mean, looking at the waveform, here's the kick hitting and the snare hitting. So the snare is a good bit quieter, but in just the listening audibly, the snare still makes up a good chunk of the sound. Now you might hear that and think, oh man, that's not usable. But it actually is really usable if you're not looking at it to be just your kick drum sound. Our original, the kick drum mic by itself with the SM7 sounds pretty good already. Got some of that snap, and it actually has a decent amount of low end, which is nice. Add it with this one, and you got a nice, thick, round, warm low end. Add the snare mic, and you've got the thickness of the fat mic on the snare, plus the brightness of the SM57 on the top of the snare. With just those three microphones, if I take the fat mic in and out, you can hear it's doing a lot to the sound. Here it is without, and I'll add it back in. It gives a lot of things to the sound. Now, I know that's fairly subtle, but what I heard, and if you want to rewind and listen a couple times, when I took the fat mic out, it was very clinical, very clean, very pristine, very precise. And that's actually how the entire kit sounds to me without that fat mic. It's just very, very clean, and which is fine, but I like to have a little oomph to my drums. So here it is without the fat mic at all again. Just very fine. A fine recording. We could get a fine mix out of that. And there's no room for room mics, right? Because it's a tiny room. So this is kind of acting as my catch-all microphone. I'm going to move the fader up on my fader port as we listen and listen to what it brings into the sound. I know I've done this a few times, but I feel like it's worth hammering home because it's a really cool feature. It just suddenly, to me, it feels like it glues everything together. So what's the takeaway point? That you should get a Cascade ribbon mic and place it in that exact position next time you record drums? No, not necessarily, but it's worth a shot. More than that, if you have an extra microphone and you're recording something like drums, or really anything, it never hurts to slap that mic up in a place you might not think makes sense and see what happens. This was a happy accident that I did several drum sessions ago that has stuck with me, and I keep using it, and it keeps working. Even on a song like this that has a very bright sounding snare and isn't a big rock song. I mean, if you listen to the full tracks, this is like for a children's album, right? We even got some fun claps in there, right? So you can hear it's bouncy, it's fun, and by the way, that was all recorded at the same time in this studio. Acoustic right here, bass sitting over there, drums in the other room, worked out pretty well. But that's it. That's what I wanted to show you. I encourage you, if you ever do any sort of drum recording especially, to find your own fat mic. Whether it's this guy, which is pretty cheap, or you just take maybe even an old crappy mic you never use and set it up in a random place and just see what happens, could pay off for you. So if you've already discovered your fat mic, or once you do, I want you to leave a comment below and let us know, because as you can tell, we kind of like fat things around here, and I'd love to hear about your fat mic. That's it.